Okay. The meeting is called to order. I think everyone is present except Craig, and so hopefully he will join us soon. Dave, are there any additions to the agenda?
I have none.
Okay, I should probably do a roll call. Is that correct?
Sure.
So we've got Rita.
Here.
Steve. And myself, Dave, Paul.
Yep.
We don't have Brian Larson, I don't think, but he's not on the. Okay. So, and Dave, do we have any new members anyone new who has applied to be on the park board?
Not that I've heard. Still looking for that applicant.
Okay.
That suggests that we might want to try to find somebody if we know somebody who might be useful.
Well, I think Dave asked us to do that the last time we met. Did you not?
Yes.
We were
Yeah, it's always nice to recruit or, at least pass the word around friends and neighbors and coffee clutches. And, City Hall has been putting out announcements for that, but we can stay on them.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk about it on the radio tomorrow as well.
Yeah, I think I saw it on WTIP or something. But
Yeah. Okay, that'd be great. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hi, Tulip. My cat has joined the meeting.
We need another member.
Okay. Yeah. The August minutes, hopefully you had a chance to read
I just
through
have
them.
one correction, and I'm not sure. It said that I did the motion by myself to approve the meeting minutes, and I seconded it. I don't think I could do both on that last.
Yeah, and I don't remember.
Good eye, Rita.
That's under.
Yep. There's a typo there. I'll fact check that. I'll check the tape.
It's all right. I mean, I just don't
Oh,
think I
good
can.
eye. There's always
Okay.
one typo.
Yep.
Well, that's not
Thanks for
bad.
checking.
Just to make sure you're reading them.
With that correction, is there a motion to approve the minutes as corrected?
I'll motion to approve it, the August minutes.
Is there a second to that motion?
Sure.
Thanks, Steve. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. On to our regular business, the disc golf proposal. Adam, well, Dave, first, do you want to introduce anything about it? Or Paul, before we have Adam go ahead and there's a pretty good explanation provided to us, which was helpful.
Yeah, sure, Sally. Thanks. I will do the honors of introducing Adam Mella. Everyone can see him on the screen. He's avid disc golf participant and approached us a couple years ago. Well, for those that have been on the board for a while now, we had maybe 3 years ago the same pitch for a disc golf course that would share the grounds with Gunflint Hills Golf Course. Previous superintendent was not a fan, and so that discussion didn't go very far, just not having the support of the superintendent. Now with Paul Jones on board, and yet very, I think, out of the loop when it comes to what is being proposed, I'll be fair and say Paul hasn't had very much input on this at all. Adam and Paul haven't met. Adam and I have met, and he asked me to bounce this idea off of Paul, and Paul, being a sport, said, "Oh yeah, well, it sounds interesting. It's not a hard no, so let's talk about it. Let's have a presentation, have a proposal." Adam's done a great job of putting that together. That went out in your park board packet. I think everyone's got a copy of Adam's proposal for disc golf up at the Gunflint Hills property. And I think we're in that early stage right now of just hearing Adam and what he has to say, and everyone else getting to decide if we think this is a good idea or not. So Adam, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Dave. And thanks for taking the time to hear this proposal tonight, everyone. Yeah, you got my letter, so I won't reread the whole thing. I mean, I think that says pretty much everything I'd like to start by saying. But the gist of it is that I would like this board to consider adding a disc golf course to the city's capital improvement priority list. And if that means it's a year out or 5 years out, I just want to get the ball rolling on that. If this is a possibility, it sounds from what David told me in talking with Paul, that he'd possibly be open to allowing a course at the current Gunflint Hills as long as it didn't interfere with the existing course. And it sounds like there's 10 acres of woods up on the north side of the property that the city does own. Farther down in my letter to the board here, I just noted that the most difficult thing about setting up a disc golf course is finding the property, suitable property for it. And wooded courses are an excellent challenge. And as I noted, that it really wouldn't take a whole lot of upfront investment by the city. And there's other ways we can do that. And then once the course is in, there's really not a whole lot of maintenance involved. I mean, it's essentially just a series of hiking trails. So consider that, a basic hiking trail, how much work do you really have to put into it once it's established? It's not a whole lot. And so it's a really nice use of a nice little section of woods that's close to town. As I noted, there's a lot of other cities in northern Minnesota, especially all over the U.S., and it's a worldwide game at this point. But there's been a lot of courses built nearby, in the last 10 years, and I think that speaks to the popularity of the game. But unfortunately, we don't have a public course up here. Lutzen has one on their resort. You can pay to play. But I think that the community could really benefit from it. I'm not a city resident. I've been living in the county for 10 years now. I live just outside of town, so I can't volunteer for the Parks Board, but I'd be willing to volunteer in any way I can to help plan out or do the lopping work that would need to be done to make this happen. But yeah, I think that says pretty much what I'd like to communicate to the board at this point. Do you have any questions for me? And what would be the next steps as far as getting the ball rolling on this?
Adam, does Cascade have a course over there? I noticed I saw some of those.
Yeah, it's still listed, and there's a variety of apps and websites you can look for disc golf courses near you, and they still have it listed there, but I've never been able to play it. From what I've been told, it's there, but it's like it hadn't been maintained, and the baskets that they have in place are like made of leather or something, which could be fun. But yeah. My understanding is it isn't really playable right now.
Okay.
Where was it? Where is that one?
Cascade. When you go hiking over at Cascade, I saw several of those. I thought they were the metal ones though, with the chain and stuff, the ones I saw.
I haven't been back there, but yeah, I was everything I've heard about it is it's not in really playable condition right now. I
just wondered if we could use if they don't do it, if we can get the basket thing. What do you call those, Adam?
The baskets?
Yeah. I don't know if they don't use them.
Oh yeah, like if they have some baskets available, that would make it even less of that would be the main cost to getting a course together. Is just I have some like portable baskets at my house that are under $100, and they're fine, but typically you want more of a permanent basket on a course like that's going to be open to the public like this. So it'd be a little bit more than that per basket if we had to buy them. But yeah, if there's a way to find some that are previously if Cascade had some, that would be an interesting option to look into. I don't know if it doesn't seem that they're interested in making that course open again, but it is under newer ownership over there, and maybe it's something they have in their plans. I have not talked to them.
Yeah, they look curious.
Go ahead.
Is there access to that wooded area from the existing parking lot, or would we be looking at a need for parking that would be separate from the regular golf course?
I think if you went off the golf course road, like not off the Gunflint Trail, but the other side, you can access that woods, just park on the side of the road and walk into the woods there. And I don't know that would be an easy option. A parking area certainly would work as well, but that would obviously add more cost to the project. But to access it directly from the golf course, like by the office there, if you park there, you have to walk all the way across the whole golf course, which I think would impact the other golfers. So you probably wouldn't want to do it that way.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Well, it looks like
Am I correct that that everybody believes that we're never going to be able to put any housing on that in that property? I raised that question sometime back, I think, with the city manager, and he wasn't at all interested in the idea of housing on excess property on the golf course.
It would have to go through the city approval anyway, wouldn't it? Even if we agreed to look in there.
Yeah, I've never seen housing on the agenda or horizon up there. When we were brainstorming ideas with our golf task force, we're between superintendents. We had the golf task force looking at some new ideas for use up there, nature area, disc golf, those sort of ideas were on the table. I didn't think housing was a viable option. But you know what? I would like to talk about this piece of land a little bit with Paul, as he knows it better than anyone. We haven't had a chance to go up there and walk it. And are we even in the right neighborhood, Paul? Is that usable forest land or is it wet? What is your opinion of that parcel?
Well, I haven't been able to go scope out the whole scenario. Basically, looking at the picture and the 10-acre triangle there, a good portion of that triangle is cutting over parts of the courses that are like over the 8 tee box, over the 6th green, over the 1st green. So it really cuts into that square. You can't even be close to those zones. So I think it kind of takes a bite out of there. And I think on one side, I just don't know the lay of the how much of that is a low wet ground. There might be some nice high ground back there, but I just haven't explored the total layout back there yet.
I think the first thing that I would like to see done is wintertime would be a really good time, or late fall, to walk through the property when the leaves are down and you can see better, and get a topographical map and go through the place and say, does this really make sense? I suspect it will, that you can find a way, but if you came up with some notions of what land was usable and what might not be, and the issue of boundaries like Paul was talking about, it would be, I think, fairly easy to move it forward at that point once we know what you have in mind. The other question is, if you're talking about 9 holes, and you're talking about something like $300 a hole for the capital piece, plus the cutting and whatever. Do I have that right, Adam?
Yes.
Okay, so that's not a huge dollar amount. And the other thing is that you might want to think about the question of, if people want to rent discs from us, it would have to be at the golf course house, and we'd have to have some plan for how people get from there over to the thing without wandering too much on the golf course or at all.
Yeah, you might just have to stop in there and then drive around.
I think you can just go up the golf course road. It turns left and it'll end up right next to the property you're talking about at the north end.
Yeah, certainly renting discs would be an option, and you could even have like discs printed up with the logo for the golf course on them that you could sell there. You might generate extra concessions once that opens back up next year, just by having those people around. And another thing I noted in the letter is these can be used as like snowshoeing or hiking trails. You don't necessarily need to be out playing the golf if you have these trails kind of cut in there. Just be a nice way to make use of that land.
And Adam,
yeah, I've not walked it myself. I've just kind of driven by and looked at it from the road a little bit at this point, but it would be nice to actually go in there and walk around and see, but it looks like really beautiful woods, which would be a great feature for something like this.
Adam,
To do it before Paul's gone.
to take care of it?
I'm sorry, Rita, what?
It said you had some volunteers that were willing to maintain it or clear it.
Yeah, we have a Facebook group in the county for people that play, and there's like 50 members on there, but I'd say I golf with like an active group of like 6 guys, and I've done a lot of work on my own property, and so I would definitely be willing to volunteer, and I would think I could get a couple of these other guys for sure to get on board. It wouldn't take more than a couple people to really open up some trails in there. And like I said in the letter, I wouldn't advocate cutting down any big trees or anything. It's really just a lot of work with a hand lopper to make it walkable and playable. And then the least we have to do, the better. That would be my opinion. But yeah, I would hope that we could organize it and get a lot of that work done with volunteers just to keep the cost down. And I think there's enough people in the county willing to do that to make this happen. Yes.
Paul, you go back to Duluth for the winter, right?
Yeah.
So, and whenabouts will that likely happen?
Well, we're closing the course Monday, and then we'll be working here probably, towards the end till the end of the month, doing this and that to shut down the course.
The reason I raised that question, Adam, is so that if it would make sense to me if you and Paul walked that land together so that you wouldn't be surprised by his reaction and vice versa.
Certainly, yeah. I'd love to get a look at it and talk more with Paul about this idea, which is, it's just an idea at this point, but figured you got to start somewhere. But if he's willing to meet up at some point, in the next month here and take a walk, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Yeah, Adam, how much acreage do you think that makes a course like what you're looking at?
I think, you could do it in 5, and especially in a wooded course, some courses where it's wide open, they take up a lot of room, but it's a lot of open space. In a wooded course, typically the holes would be a lot shorter. And so I think just looking at it on Google Maps and kind of looking at the plat book and just kind of with the overlay of seeing where the actual golf course is, because it does kind of go up into that woods a little bit. We wouldn't want to interfere with that, but even if it's not a full 10 acres of woods, I think 9 holes would fit in there. It's a lot of it's just how you put it all together and how long you make the holes. I mean, each course is different, just kind of built into the landscape it exists in.
Yeah, so
There's a fair likelihood, Adam, that the city has a topographical map that would allow you to look at the elevations as well as walk through it. And if they don't have it, the Geological Survey will sell you one.
I think walking through it is a good suggestion with Paul and Adam, and then we could, take it up from there. After that, I think it's a neat idea. I think, anytime we have activities for folks in town that we can advertise, it sounds like it would be a free venture except for them buying Frisbees or.
Yeah, I mean, some courses do charge, but usually when it's a public course on city property, they're free to play. So yeah, it's not going to generate a ton of revenue. That's not really the idea behind them. You could charge $5 or something, but that's going to decrease the use on it. I think the idea would be just to get more young people into it. And that's one of the draws of the game. It's pretty inexpensive to get a couple of Frisbees and it's a good excuse to go take a walk in the woods.
Sure.
We'd probably net more money. We'd probably net more money by just asking for donations from the people who play, because then we wouldn't have to hire somebody to supervise the payment and all that stuff.
Sure, that's another idea.
Dave, do you have other suggestions as to where you think we should be looking at next steps in this considering this proposal?
No, I think we're on the right track. It's really just a feasibility study at this point. And the first step of, are we willing to look into this? If we all think this is a good idea, which I think I'm hearing consensus around that, we would be happy to look at the land, look at the lay of the land, walk the land, come back with a sketch of
Unlike the earlier time when there was talk of having a golf thing on top of the golf course, I think there's no automatic opposition here to what you're talking about. If it makes sense when you get done with the planning.
You go look at it and come back with us with more details?
I don't think we need that motion, Rita. I sent the consensus. The only other piece here is the across the street Sawtooth Bluffs project. We've been with the county for a couple of years now. There was a master plan done for the Sawtooth Bluffs, the old Ski Hill
Yeah.
property. And a piece of that included disc golf as a placeholder with that similar acknowledgement of the local club and the desire for a local course. And so when we were planning the Sawtooth Bluffs project, this was a couple years ago now, I know disc golf was in the mix for amenities and the potential exists. That project has really sort of been backburnered now. I don't think the county or the city is in a position of getting that joint powers board formed to administer that land. I know the local dog group is interested in dog park development on that in the Sawtooth Bluffs project as well. So that was a big piece of those amenities, were the user groups and their willingness and motivation to organize and, basically do a lot of the work involved in developing those facilities. If the dog park is to be, the dog group was going to do it. Same goes for disc golf. But with the idea that we have this city land now, it's entirely within the ability of our parks department to pull it off. I think it's a good road to go for getting a disc golf in sooner than later. We could look at the land, make sure it fits, and then really put it in the priority list of capital projects. That's something we're going to look at very soon in this off-season cycle, is when we review our capital project lists. And we've got some big projects on that list, like the boat launch and the Highway 61 corridor. But we've also, I think we've got room for some smaller projects like this.
Well, I guess you should come back with a map and also cost. I don't know what those things cost, but that should be in a proposal. The nets or the hoops, whatever.
Adam, when you come back after you've looked at the property and you're still interested, if you had a ballpark or a range of estimates of cost to go along with it, so we can see where it fit in our planning process. I don't think it's a huge number, but we ought to know what it is.
Sure, absolutely.
I also think the biggest, most important piece is compatibility with Gunflint Hills Golf. It's a very old institution up there and very iconic, and that, Paul is very...
Speak up, Sonny.
I think Paul's very progressive as a new superintendent and has the ability to manage change, but we want to make sure Paul is 100% on board with this, as well as the Gunflint Hills golf community. So there's a little bit of vetting out there where, Paul's got to make sure it fits with his operations.
If you really get into a problem with the boundaries with the golf course, I suppose it would be possible to build a fence in the trees, but that's kind of a third choice.
That doesn't sound good.
No.
Okay, fourth choice.
I think there would be plenty of room, but yeah, we wouldn't want to interfere with the existing course or the players in any way. So I mean, if we take a look at it and it seems like it's not going to fit, then that's fine. But I think it's an interesting parcel of land, and I would love to go have a look at it and talk to Paul a little bit more about this in person.
And if it does go through, I think signage with expectations would be clear, because we do not want the two groups to have to, one group to interfere with the other and so on. So my explanation of expectations would be appropriate. So let's go informally with that, with Paul and Adam connecting, taking a look at things. And then if Paul can report back next month and kind of tell us what they saw and what his thoughts are. And
All right.
if he wants to be included, he can be included.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll be happy to be in on that party.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to checking it out. And yeah, I think this could work. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Adam.
All right, I gotta get back to work.
Thank you, Adam. We'll be in touch.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay. Golf report. And I have to say, before we go into that, I have heard such positive compliments about the golf course and the condition this year that Paul should be really, and his staff should be very proud of themselves. So with that, Paul, take it away.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. I think that we had some good exposure this year. We noticed a lot of daily rounds, a lot of visitors we hadn't noticed before. It was busy. Looking at the numbers, we're up 25%. In gross revenue. It seemed like we were busier than that. I mean, we had a lot of people out here, and I think that we did have a lot of good comments. I think some people were surprised what the course was out here. That maybe hadn't played here for a while or not at all. And then so I think that we'll get some playback from that in the future and something to build on. I think that I think in general this year a lot of people their numbers are certainly up with the COVID. Golf seems to be a good activity for that. So that just was a good opportunity for us to have exposure. And then, I think we had, a number of visitors from the Lutzen area because, the course was the greens were had some mending time. And so we had some visitors because of that. And that, we got positive comments. So I think that, all that stuff is good. And we had a good year with just the way that things were running. I really liked I really liked how things are running with the pandemic setup here. I mean, it worked well for us with our limited crew, and our crew did a really good job this year too. Absolutely, we don't have a big staff here, but everybody that's on staff is really great. I mean, really did a really great job.
Does anyone
I'm
have
assuming
questions?
that we'll have some kind of an end of the year written report after all the money is done, and whatever proposals you have for differences for next year sometime prior to February or so.
Yeah, I mean, it's as far as we always have issues. We've got some equipment issues. We have issues with the cart. We really struggled with the carts, but we managed to kind of keep, one cart, we're going to call it the 911 cart because we're taking parts off the 9 cart and the 11 cart and putting them together into one cart. That'll be our 911 cart. But, we've got a number of carts that are just barely, they're really old, and so that's something that we're going to have to figure out. The cart situation here, I think that it's certainly with the amount of traffic that we had this year, we were stressed on carts quite frequently, and I just think it's gonna be harmful to our business in the future if we don't correct some things on the carts.
Well, the winter's a good time to look for carts, I think. Different courses and such that are changing out.
Well, it's good. It's what I've been finding is there's a couple of different options. I was kind of proposing just maybe trying to lease them for a year and see how everybody like that look, because it would be different. And then the other thing too is I found our best opportunities are talking directly to the factory reps. Like right now, Lutzen's got 8 carts that they want to sell. Well, they're 5 years old, and they're less than the ones, or they're actually not much difference in price than what I was talking to the factory rep for 1-year-old ones. So I think talking to the factory rep at any given time is good. I'd say we'd probably want to be making our deals. By now, coming into the fall, coming into late summer, they have a feel for what's coming off a lease, and you can make deals at that time. If we get too late into the season, they're going to forget who we are, and the prices go up. And that's what I kind of took away from last year. I gathered information by springtime, of course, that had all changed. So, you know,
So-
Bay's operation is similar to ours, and they lease their carts, and apparently happily so.
who's that?
Silver Bay. I talked with the manager there one time, and she was telling me about likes the leasing.
Yeah, they have a lot more supporting members, and supporting members pay for these kind of overhead things. But you know, nevertheless, we have to have carts here. I'm not sure if our scenario of replacing one here, two there is going to be timely enough. I mean, if that started, you know, maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe we'd be okay. But right now we're kind of backed up with carts that are really not going to be sustaining us through our season, you know. So I don't know what the deal is there. I guess I have to make some proposals or talk to City Hall or see what they want to do. But that's something I want to focus on.
City Hall won't know what to do until you tell them what to think about. Golf isn't their thing, is it?
Well, you know, we've talked about it. It ties into our budget, and you know, I've talked to Mike. I'm pretty impressed with what Mike does. You know, talking with us on numbers and stuff. But I think we have to respond to this card thing because it's gonna affect our business just the same as the appearance of our course and the playability. The cards are going to have that same effect on us. And when we've been able to get by with what we've got for now, but it's nothing to bank on. I don't recommend it.
As far as other expensive equipment, what are you looking at? Are we doing okay now since we got the 2 new mowers?
Yeah, the 2 mowers worked out great. I mean, it was really a good deal. They're gonna and they're operating just like how we thought the program would. We're gonna get good longevity out of them because it's relatively modest use for a 9-hole course. It's a really good investment there. I think we have to buy a blower. Right now we got leaves on the course. We don't have, you know, we're not like Roots where we have all this play coming in at us every day, but we have needs to keep the course clean for the players to do. We have to keep the greens clean and in the fairways so they can find their balls and tee boxes and stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of leaf litter coming down every day. We have to tend to that, and we've got a little hand blower. It doesn't. It's not.
The flip side is, Paul. The flip side is, Paul. When our ball goes in the woods, now we can just declare the leaf rule.
The leaf rule.
The leaf rule, you know, no penalty because the ball's somewhere in that pile of leaves.
Okay, well, that's fine. You can use the leaf rule all year long. But yeah, I think that I you know, we're looking at a couple things that we're wanting to look at. I think the next thing on the list was a sprayer, but I think our priority is probably going to be a blower, just because it's got a lot of uses. Anything from grass clippings, you know, we can respond to cleaning up issues really quickly with one guy on a golf cart. So that'll be a good tool. We need to have that going here. And, you know, that was kind of the next thing with their lineup. A sprayer right now. We've got our old sprayer. We've got it functional right now. And I've kind of been looking for a sprayer for, you know, that's a good deal. And those are hard to find. You have to kind of wait and see on that. But I think we're in a position where we can, you know, wait a little bit and find a good deal.
Well, those items sound like they're less expensive than the mowers and stuff like that. So hopefully with the budget and working with the cities, I'm not sure the budget that is provided to you, but it does sound like a lot of that is doable. The carts would be probably the most important there in terms of customer satisfaction. But
I think it's fair to say that if I understand it correctly, with the revenue up and expenses not being up dramatically, that we probably are in a better shape at the end of this year than we were last year. Is that a fair statement, Paul?
Oh yeah, we are, but the quest is to try to minimize the amount that the city has to kick in. That at least that's my perspective.
I'm sure the city feels that way, and as a practical matter, it's basically coming out of Dave's profit. So he's the one who's what you want to have on your side for wherever you're moving forward.
That's true.
Yeah, it's true. We're all one big general fund. So what the course needs, we make up for with the campground. I'm looking at the sheets as of the end of August. Through the end of August, the golf course had netted 121, well, about 122,000 is what the year-to-date numbers were through the end of August. And that was compared to 112,000 the previous year. So there's that big gain that Paul's talking about. And I understand September was just really good compared to last September. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I know last September, rain was almost every day and maybe made $6,000 or $8,000 the whole month. Whereas this year, what did you net, Paul, about 30 some?
30, yeah.
Yeah. So big in September is going to put us close to 150,000 on the revenue, which is, huge compared to where we were at a couple years ago, just cracking 100,000.
Yeah, I looked at the gross revenues, and we're at like 163 now today, and then there'll be a little more going in the pot today, but not much. But and then last year I think it was 132 for the whole year.
What's our expenses look like?
Difficult to tell. There's still several months left to go, but we had budgeted to spend close to 200,000. And that was, kind of the worst case, and including some capital purchases that were budgeted for. Every year we put aside about 11,000 for this idea of, replacement funding our capital fleet. And so I could see expenses coming in at about 180. So we still have a deficit there, $20,000 to $30,000 deficit, way better than where we were at several years ago, $60,000, $80,000 of deficit.
The trend line is clearly good, and I think as long as the trend line is right, the council's going to go along with any reasonable proposals that you and Dave make and that we approve of.
Well, I think we just want to keep the place and keep improving things, and keep having good experience for our visitors that play.
Any other questions? Thank you, Paul.
Nice year, Paul. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Yep.
Thanks, Paul.
Yep. Thanks, Dave.
The city council report is next, but I can't see on my screen that our city council rep Craig is here. Is that correct?
That's right.
So then let's move to the park report. And I'll let Dave take over.
All right, thanks, Sally. So it's that time of the year, time to adjust the rates for 2021. We do every October. We've got a little bit of pressure tonight to decide the nightly rates, as those we need to update our computers and get ready for 2021 bookings, which will start in November with our new 6 months ahead booking plan. We will be needing to update our nightly pricing so that November 1st we can start the online booking machine and the calls for May 1st reservations. So I put together the packet that was in what was mailed out and emailed last Thursday. You can see my discussion on our rates. A lot of review here, a lot of sort of the why we do it. What are we in the business of? We sell fun, we sell campsites and marina docks, and it's for the greater good of the city of Grand Marais to collect revenue for property tax relief. That's the number one priority of our user fees. And then the top goal, of course, of the operations here internally is to maintain and reinvest. And so keeping those rates competitive and keeping those marginal adjustments, I think, has been a proven strategy. I've outlined some of the capital expenses we've had over the last 14 years or so under my watch, and it's a good list to reflect back on and to see that we have been putting a lot back in, over $1.2 million spent in the last 14 years. A big chunk of that, of course, was the new bathhouse out at number 4, which is, wow, going on 15 years old now. But we've continued to upgrade sites with power upgrades. Pavement's been a priority. The park office remodel was a big project 4 years ago. You know, we just keep plugging along on these capital improvements. And what's to come, of course, is the Highway 61 corridor, the landing project, which has actually been delayed. I just got news that we'll be waiting on the build out of the landing over in the community connection until 2022, but that's scheduled as a 6-figure project. The Bathhouse 3 rebuild is very much top priority for a big ticket item to spend on. And then the public access is mostly funded, but I'm sure we're going to come up with some extra costs down there as well. And then, you know, continue to budget for new electric at sites, new pavement, new water and sewer as well. So rate adjustments, without drawing out what we've done over the last many years, I've just sort of summarized here. We usually go marginal. We go like 1 to 3% has been the strategy. A lot of times that's like the difference of 50 cents versus $1 on the overnight rates. The monthlies have kind of fallen in line with the nightlies. If we go 3% on nightlies, we go 3% on monthlies. That's usually the equivalent of like $20 or so per month on the monthly rates. Seasonal marina rates as well get that $1 added on, is usually less than 2% increase. Really has had no effect on occupancy when it comes to price elasticity. We're not losing guests based on price. This is apparent. Very seldom do we have the dissatisfied guest that, you know, moves down the road because we're too expensive. We have the ability to offer different prices. We've got very premium sites on the water, full hookup sites that go for $60 a night. We also have the base no hookups tent sites, $30 a night. I think that range gives a lot of people the opportunity to pick a price that's right for them. And so we are able to have a wide range of guests, a wide range of sites, and price is usually no object. Yeah, we've really been growing. You know, we see these trends where 6 years ago, occupancy on the 6-month composite was only 43%. This is because May and October are very slow, had been very slow, you know, 20% occupancy rate in those months versus 90% in July and August, creates that average of 40-some%. And now we've been able to bump that up to close to 59%, I think is what we came in on occupancy last year. The money has been following suit. The pickup there has been tremendous. We've got 43% in increase in revenue over the last 6 years. A lot of that due to the rising occupancy as well as the rate adjustments going up. So I've sort of calculated for every 1% that we gain in occupancy, that's the equivalent of $50,000. The real interesting analysis here is site by site revenue. The chart you're seeing with the 2018, that's a typo. That should be 2019. This was revised. It was a cut and paste from the 2018 chart, but these numbers are actually 2019 numbers, and they reflect the bit of an increase on the rates. The occupancy was also up last year. And so we're seeing like front row prime sites, those very prime sites right on the water. Each of those fetch an average of $8,300 a season on the nightly rate. And those are by far the best sites, the most popular, the most expensive, but they're the most sought after, and the occupancy there reflects their high yields. The other big popular site is the nightly full hookup standard site. That's been returning roughly $5,100 per site as of last year. Then we start to fall into the sort of average sites there, where electric water sites, there we have a lot of them, but they're still yielding close to $4,200 a season. Lakeside tent sites, close to $4,000 a site. Standard tent sites at $2,800. Then the monthly comparison is interesting. The red is the standard monthly, the not a prime site, not a big view site. those are averaging about $3,200 a season. And then the prime monthly, those that we've designated as bigger, better with a view, are averaging close to $4,200 a season. And so we pair those between the two. You look at monthly versus nightly, and we've been seeing this discrepancy for years. And as our nightly rates have crept up, that disparity is getting even farther apart. And
Because I don't think you can just add 3% or 5% on those monthlies. Even though we're doing it across the board for the nightly, we need to generate and look at those rates a little more carefully as far as the increase, because 3%, 5% on those isn't catching up with the nightly increases. So,
yeah, that's why I put this information out there, Rita. I mean, it's obvious when you look at it that way.
it's thorough. I was reading on 2016, you said standard monthlies increased 1.9% and prime monthlies went up 9.2%. So right there, we have a big difference in increase.
Yeah, that was the year that we split them apart, where it went from all monthly sites used to be just one rate. Let's say they were all standard, for example. And in 2016, we started to really look at these numbers and say, wait a minute, the site with a view is very much in demand.
Right.
Let's give the monthly folks the option to pay for that. And the discussion started with, let's try to align that closer to the nightly equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
That was 2016. The appetite, though, for bringing it up there to, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 per season was not there in 2016. There wasn't broad support for those sort of drastic rate hikes that would have brought us closer to nightly equivalents. But we did go with that prime designation that made 30-some sites with a view, 10% more than a standard monthly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we, as a board, we need to probably talk about standard 12-month plan, prime 12-month plan, and then that monthly, the monthly rate that you have there. I don't agree with those rates. I mean, if we have, 300 people on a waiting list for monthlies?
Yes.
And that's a big list. I mean, and we're not generating the income from those sites that we are on nightly sites. And then
this has been one of those deals, Rita, we've been battling for years, and we've had this discussion every fall. But
I really think we have to ask who we're representing. And while many people who are seasonal renters in the rec park are wonderful people, and they are our friends as well.
Exactly.
The taxpayers of Grand Marais are who we're representing here.
I agree with you.
And so, I think we really have to look at it closely, and whether we reduce the number of monthly sites or we bring the charge for monthly site up to a more comparable rate. I think those are our real decisions that we have to look at and recommend for the city council to consider.
I have a question about the low revenue part of it, the tenting sites. Generally speaking, say over the last 3 years, have the tenting sites been full, or have there been lots of times when there were vacancies?
Just this year, Steve, was our, big gain in tenting. I think due to the pandemic and folks' comfort levels, traveling in their own vehicles, sleeping in their own sleeping bag, tent sites became very popular this year. Almost, I think, over a 30% gain in occupancy in our tent. And so, yes, in years past, we've had on any given week, day, tent openings in July and August. We've had, I think, as a whole, we're known as an RV park and not a tent park. And so in the past, tent sites have not been as heavily used. We've had, I think averaging, if I look at the 2020, I don't have the end of year numbers yet on the tents, but they're going to be way more. They were much more busy this year. We had people in tents that were paying $50 a night for RV sites because those were available. Tent sites were the ones that have been booked solid because of the demand, because of COVID-19. But again, we've only got 47 of the tent sites in our 300 site count. So it's a much smaller market. Of those 47, 15 of them are the lakeside tent sites that are very popular and have had a much higher occupancy rate historically. And so those sites charge $5 more per night than a standard tent site, but people aren't concerned about the price. They want the location, they want the lakeside. And so that sort of proves the point that, folks are willing to pay more for lakeside.
From an equality standpoint and from a sort of future marketing, I'm guessing that the tenders are either families with small kids or youngsters for the most part. Is that a fair assumption?
It's tough to generalize. I've seen all types actually. Like there's all kinds of folks in tents.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say they're younger, but not all kids.
And in all events, those people who are in tents, generally speaking, we assume don't have as much money as the ones who own the big RVs. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah. Again, I don't like to generalize, but it's nice that we can offer it all, especially like a woodsy tent loop up on the bluff. People are just amazed to find those up on the hill that are woodsy and tucked away, and they just can't believe they're staying in the city. And we can have some very affluent folks in tents, but the rate is more reflective of the services offered. We don't have electric and water and sewer to provide, so that they just have that base rate of the bathhouse service and the amenities on site, picnic table, grill. We've been less aggressive in dialing up those rates because we look at some state forest camp that's $15 a night for tenting. State parks have had a sort of subsidized system where they look cheap on the rack card, but then you got to buy a car pass. Maybe you got to buy extra vehicle or extra persons. It's difficult to compare rates apples to apples with state parks, but it is interesting to note that both Black Beach down in Silver Bay that has just opened this season, as well as Burlington Bay down in Two Harbors, the municipal, have both caught up that have copied our rates. They're in at that $40 a night, $40, $50 a night for RVs. We had seen in the past, especially with Burlington Bay being, a bit cheaper, this idea that, we're out of adjustment here. We're the most expensive on the lake. Not so much anymore. I think Black Beach, I just looked at the rates and they're identical to ours.
Yeah, and they're full. I mean, they're pretty full.
Yeah, so there's a standard to be set. RVing in general is amazing trend of demand and COVID campers selling. And this year it seemed like we could have charged 20% more just because people were desperate to get out. I don't know how that looks in the next few years and if we can be that aggressive with our rates, but
as I sit here today, based on the discussion so far, I would prefer not to raise the non-lakeside tent rates. They aren't a significant part of our revenue anyway, and it provides an opportunity for people of lesser means. $29 a night is not cheap. Dave Sari and I went RVing once in September up in the Ely direction, and we paid $30 a night to park our RV with sewer and water, and electricity. So the fact that we're on the shore means we can charge more. But by the same token, I think that from a marketing perspective, if we're looking at the long haul, we'd love to develop people who started out tenting here and then bought the RV and came back, right?
But we're only talking 50 cents, I think, isn't that 3% brings it to 29 and 5% brings it to 29.50.
Yeah, and it's not a big deal. The 3% number, the 5% gets more impressive, and the really impressive part is what happens when you do it year after year after year. After a while, I assume we've been raising it 3% or so for several years now, right?
Not so much, Steve. There's where we have had that empathy or that strategy of keeping tents reasonable. In the past, we've had it. I'm almost certain we've froze the tent rate a couple of years. We didn't increase it, whereas we added $1 to the RV rates because we have seen that price ceiling on tents. Once we get to 30, it seems like enough.
Dave, okay. I have some questions about our added costs. This year, we didn't use the hand dryers. We had paper, we had extra porta potties, we had extra garbage removal due to COVID. And it's likely that we will still be in that situation next summer with the predictions that people will still be being cautious and that COVID will still be part of our lives. So what percentage of increase would we be looking at overall for the cost of the expense of managing those changes?
Well, that's tough, Sally. Tough to pinpoint. This year in particular, we've received CARES funding, that's federal stimulus funding that is, I'm not sure what it stands for, but the CARES funding has been available. We have a large pot of that. It needs to be spent, I believe, by the end of this month, but that is going towards the expenses for extra porta potties and the extra expense for paper towels and extra gloves and PPE, sanitizer. All of that we've been coding separately for this year's bills so that we can take advantage of that federal CARES Act money. So in theory, we won't be suffering a lot of extra out-of-pocket expenses due to COVID and the 2020 budget cycle. We haven't accounted for 2021. I guess we haven't thought that, far ahead as to what is it going to cost more next year. But the extra expenses this year are being covered by CARES funding. And I don't think that's a, very big factor here.
But because you have been keeping track of those expenses, it will tell us what we need to look at in terms of funding for next year. Some of the ticket items that you have put in that CARES funding. It's likely going to have to be spending those same dollars next year, which could impact our decision to go with a 5% increase over a 3% increase.
Yeah, that's true. But I think it's, 5 figures at most, like 20 to 50,000 on the very high end of expenses. I don't think we're there yet. I think we're more like $10,000 to $20,000 of extra expenses.
Okay. And have you had extra staff due to cleaning purposes and so on? I know we've kept some restroom or some bathhouses closed, and I don't know that we will be doing that next year. No,
we don't intend to. We haven't necessarily added additional staff. We've redirected staff to spend more time on cleaning. We haven't had the ball fields to take care of. I think I talked about this in the August meeting, where because the community ed ball field program didn't run this summer, that was a huge relief in probably 40 hours a week of ball field chalking and grooming for the community ed ball program. I'm thinking we spent less on labor this year. I'm seeing that in my August report, we're down about 5,000 on part-time labor, and that's because we have had 6 outside workers instead of 8. And inside in the office, we've had 3 front desk attendants instead of 4 because of the social distance and not being open inside. And so if anything, we've actually saved a little bit on staffing this year. We've spent extra time cleaning, but we haven't had those additional event expenses, for example, fishermen's, radio waves, all those, art fair, that all took a lot of our time as well. So there's a big offset in the canceling of some of the programming and the events that is going to come back to save us a few dollars on staff. But
so
I think,
Dave, what do we have to decide tonight? That's going to be published.
Nightly rates.
Okay, so what?
There's like around monthly. I think you're right, Rita. Like we need a separate meeting to talk about monthly and monthly rates and monthly policies. We're getting all this pressure on the waiting list, and it's unsustainable. These like hundreds of people on the waiting list, new people signing up now. We can't even give them hope for a call. So there could or should be a change to the monthly program, the monthly policy, the monthly rates. That's a bigger discussion.
Tonight we could vote on the nightly rates, 3 or 5% or whatever we decide, and the marina rates, because those will be published. Then we can table the seasonal, because I think that needs a whole different look. I think that needs a whole meeting in itself practically, but I think it's something as board members, we need to really look at those figures and think about what we want to do best for the campground with those rates.
Yes.
I have one other question about the shoulder seasons, April, May on the one hand, and maybe early June and September, October on the other end. Am I correct that we're generally not full in those periods, or is that correct?
Yeah, for May, I think we were 25% occupied last 2019 May. And when that was a big gain, it had been like
May's picking up a lot, May and
So
October.
I'm thinking that we might consider something like what happened when I rented a cabin for a week. If I did it for 7 days, I got the seventh day free.
Yep, we've got that.
That sort of thing in the shoulder seasons might pick up some more work, especially at the temp.
I'm on that, Steve, with both the weekly rate as well as an off-peak rate. If you look at our rate card, you'll see how we have the May 1st through June 15th. Those rates are $5 less per night, as well as in October. So we already account for that slow time in May and October, and we reduce our rates accordingly. It doesn't create additional demand. I mean, it's the weather. It's the cold weather that is what's, keeping folks away.
Except for the front row, right, Dave? You don't get the seventh night free anymore in the front row. Is that
That's
correct?
right. There's no discounts down front.
Okay.
But there is the off-peak, on-peak, and that's been the model, I think, with a lot of campgrounds.
Yes, it makes sense.
So
Okay.
if I look at the nightly rates, which was where we need to focus our discussion, I think, right now, and I look at the 3% fees for 2020 or 2021, and then the 5% increases, there's not a significant difference. And I think
I think we should go with
it just
5%.
makes sense to go 5% to me.
I agree.
I'm okay with 5%, except on the tent sites, I want to freeze them. At least the ones that are not by the lake. If you're comfortable with that as a friendly amendment, then we can just vote for the 5% and call it good.
Well, I don't think the difference between where we're at and the proposal for 2020, we're talking about a couple of dollars. I don't think we're going to keep anyone from coming. And we have held the line on our increases on the tent camping for a very long time.
I remember when my wife and I were tenting, we were living pretty close to the limit of our income. And so I have a great deal of sympathy for people who are willing to lie on the ground and probably can only afford to do it that way for the most part.
There is some of that, but there's a lot of people that prefer it. I mean, that's the whole cool part about camping is that's the aspect. I don't even know if it's necessarily money aspect as the nature.
It's a light way to travel. It's a really light way to travel. And, we sometimes will do that and stay in a hotel a few nights and stay and camp outside in a tent, and we enjoy it.
Well, I'm going to make a motion to increase 5% for nightly rates across the board and the marina rates.
I would second that motion. Is there any more discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No, for this reason I indicated only.
Okay. So motion carried with the 2-to-1 margin. Okay.
I have that. Thank you. So monthly, though, remember.
Yep. I think we really need to look at some different thoughts and different ideas and what you think, Dave, what we think as board members. I think it could be a good discussion. It could bring some good changes.
And we do more than just rates, but also policy, look
Right.
at the waiting list policy.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think really if our next month, our whole discussion can really be focusing on that as a primary discussion point. I think that would be good, because then we can really dig into the details.
Sounds good.
Okay, should we go to old business?
Yes, thank you. So I've just kind of wrapped that into my parks report. These are new agenda items, thanks to Steve, old business and new business. And I'm sure that this old business fits, as we have been working on the Parkside public access for some time. But I'll just go down my parks report that was sent out earlier today. Hopefully everyone's got a copy of this in the email that went out this afternoon. And so we just got through the nightly rates. Thank you for that. September occupancy was very strong. Revenue was strong. There was a month to grow in. Typically September is running about 70 to 80% occupied, so that we had some room, especially in tents. And that definitely was the case this September. The weather was great. The fall colors have been great. And so we really smashed it, 15% over last September's revenue, about 33 grand we picked up in our quest to break even with last year. We've now cut that down to just $33,000 is what we're short, is the what is now tracking year to date. As of the end of September, we have a little over $1.2 million in the bank. And so that the deficit now stands at $33,000 versus where we're at year to date 2019. Not bad, considering we were closed the first 6 weeks of the season. And we were looking at, I think, over $60,000 before September.
And that's
So-
just revenue, right, Dave? That doesn't take into factor that we haven't had as much staff, so we might actually come out not.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's, the expenses, we always just let run till the end of the year. Once we have a final report there, I can share with you, but there's generally, let's say, close to $500,000 profit in this
Pretty
number.
good considering we were closed.
Really good.
You guys have been working hard.
And we'll continue to work hard, because we're booked this weekend, we're booked next weekend. It is the last weekend of full service water, though, is sort of the big news. The Sunday the 18th is our last day of bathhouses and water at the sites.
Okay.
So home stretch. But yeah, very busy in the meantime, and we'll see how October finishes. It would be amazing if we could actually come out even, but I'm less confident of that. If we come down maybe $20,000 close to where we were last year, that'll be a huge accomplishment.
Dave, do I understand correctly that of that $500,000, roughly $148,000 will go into the capital fund and the rest will go to the city to reduce expenses?
Well, yeah, the 148 is already budgeted into that 500.
Oh, okay. So that's 500 more than that 148.
That's right.
Okay. So, well, that's outstanding. There might even be room for a golf cart or two in there.
That's right. So, the Violet Prevention Center is again hosting the Tree of Hope downtown Harbor Park. Little tree with purple lights was installed last week. There's an interpretive kiosk next to it, letting everyone know its purpose. And there'll be a socially distanced candlelight vigil next Tuesday on the 13th at 7 p.m. downtown in Harbor Park. The other big news here then is the Parkside public access projects really coming along nicely. Mike Roth and I met with the DNR staff on the video last Friday, I believe it was, Thursday, the 1st. Last Thursday we met online with the St. Paul and the Two Harbors DNR team that's been working on the Parkside plans. We got the breakwater at 95%, about to be bid. They're hoping to bid this out this fall, like late this fall, in December even would be a target date for bidding the breakwater work. That would allow the contractor to begin to move in the heavy materials. The armor stone, the rock would be transported in this winter season, like we talked about last winter, that would cut down on the wear and tear on the road. They'd be able to create stockpiles down there by the ramp and get to work next season in 2021, although not till June 1st. There is a moratorium for working in Lake Superior waters until June 1st because of fishing, spawning, trout spawning. And so best case scenario, they start to work the breakwater in June of 2021. they'd like to get it all done in 2021, but we know construction schedules, especially up in the Northland, so it's more feasible that this is a staged project where the breakwater goes in first, and then the parking lot and the landside amenities are second. Those would be more like 2022. The landside plan is only at a 50% completion, construction completion, although no major obstacles to getting that to the 95%, biddable package. There's funding though, and the DNR, they put together a probable cost for building out the breakwater. It looks like $1.8 million, and we have $2 million for this project. So that'll consume most of our money, just the breakwater. The landside amenities, the parking lot, the DNR has promised to fund out of their voter access dollar fund, which hasn't been appropriated yet, and it might not be until the July 1st, 2021 budget cycle that they get that money for the landside project, which would then necessitate that being bid after July 21st or after July 1st of 2021. And so construction likely in 2022 for the parking lot. But it's getting closer. We know this. We're back on track to demolishing the public works garages. I've re-engaged the environmental troubleshooters out of Duluth to do the testing for, asbestos and hazardous materials in the building. Hopefully get those tests done this month. We put out an alert to the local contractors that the demolition is soon pending, like kind of save a spot for us. If we can get this thing demolished in November, that would be great. But certainly by next spring, we want to get the public works garages demolished. And the dog pound's a part of that. And so again, we'll put out that call to the animal advocates and the city and the county to get together and rebuild a dog pound facility off-site. If that's really the intent here, is to keep that facility, it needs to be rebuilt off-site, and the work should begin right now.
Dave, didn't we have a meeting about this, and didn't we kind of change this parking lot a little bit to not have so many parking slots, and eventually look at maybe putting some more campsites over where the garage is right now? Didn't we kind of look at that?
That's right, Rita. We did look at a spring plan with the DNR that scaled back the parking, and that is reflected in the latest plan. You see how the parking lot really doesn't stretch to the west where the municipal shop is now. You can see just barely being touched by the parking. So it is a scaled back version of parking, mostly based on budget. And yeah, the ability to do something down there on the corner is still an option for us. Where group camping 1 is now,
Right.
That left corner would be perfectly suitable for some more sites.
That'd be nice. No, awesome. That's awesome.
So a couple more steps in this as well. Meeting with the DNR and the Minnesota Land Trust. We'll all have a video meeting soon to make sure the Land Trust is on board. Of course, they hold a conservation easement on the property down here. They've been in the loop and on board throughout this process. They've reviewed preliminary concept drawings a couple of years ago and said, thumbs up, keep us in the loop. So now that we've got some 50% plans, we'll be meeting with them and looking for their approval. But yeah, I really want to get the word out to the dog pound group that now is the time to rebuild the pound. This fall, next spring, soon as they can.
Is that going out like on WTIP and all over? I mean, I'm
I'll
sure.
talk about it tomorrow. Yeah, I'm on air tomorrow, and we'll make sure the city council gets the update. And they've talked about it. I know city and county have had this ongoing conversation with that project, and there was some hope in the spring when they were talking about it. So let's hope they keep that up. Final update there on old business is the landing. I touched on this earlier in the meeting. I got a report from downtown due to COVID that this was paused. It's on delay. It's likely not to be constructed until 2022. So that's, I think, good news for us. We need time to look at plans, review plans, and budget accordingly. So, mixed bag here. We're going to have to delay, but it's good. We need the time to, budget.
Right. That's good.
Thank you, Steve. Is there any other new business that you would like to discuss at this time?
I have just one little piece of news, and that is I'm doing 2 weddings this week at Harbor Park for the first time. And so that's kind of fun, weather permitting, of course. The other thing is that you'll recall there were 2 things about those little signs that pointed to the golf course. One is only 3 showed up instead of 4, and it turned out that was a decision that somebody from the city and the county made without telling us anything about it. The 4th sign didn't go up, and if anybody can track that down, what happened to that 4th sign, that would be nice. The people I talked to at the county weren't the old engineer who apparently handled this, but somebody at the city and somebody at the county decided to put up 3 signs instead of 4. The other thing is you'll recall that one of those signs got stolen, and Paul chatted with the folks at the county and they got us a replacement sign, and they're putting it up with rivets to make it harder to steal.
Good.
And I know Dave doesn't think much about signs, but I think it reminds our residents every time they drive by, hey, we could go golfing today.
I did see that replacement out there. That was good work, Paul and Steve. And I talked to the county on the 4th sign, Steve. I sort of got the read you got, where I wasn't able to talk to the new engineer, but I talked to the administrator, and there was only 3 placed, like the initial order was for 3. And so there's a little mystery there. It wasn't anyone from the city that scaled back, but for whatever reason, they only made 3 instead of 4.
Well, and my understanding was somewhere along the way that somebody in the city and somebody in the county decided the 4th sign wasn't going to work for some reason, but nobody said what it is or why.
Well,
maybe you can ask Mike and see if he knows anything.
it wasn't us. I've already asked all of us.
It wasn't the city at all?
No.
Well, what do you know? Well, if I can think of another place for a sign, I'll let you know.
Anything else we need to discuss before we adjourn?
Well, Steve, it's interesting you mentioned that you're doing weddings in Harbor Park. I presume these are just small group affairs. Like nobody's put in for event permits for these, which is fine.
Yeah, these are like 6 people.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what the park is made for.
And it'll last all of about 15 minutes.
Yeah, we have had some interest. You know, we've had groups that are using the picnic pavilion now for outdoor events. In the past month, you know, there's been several outdoor events taking place in the picnic pavilion. And just to be clear, groups are working through us. They're working through me. They're getting permission. They're renting the space for exclusive use, and they're preparing COVID preparedness plans so that when these groups are meeting at the pavilion, they're taking necessary COVID precautions and masking and distancing and sanitizing.
Where is this pavilion you're talking about?
It's the open shelter down on the bay here, down at the end of the road. It's in the park, like on the beach at the end of the road.
Where is it in relationship to the Coast Guard building?
Totally across the bay. It's here in the park.
Okay, so the pavilion's in the rec park.
Yep.
Okay, now I understand.
If that's where your wedding is.
No, we're over in Harbor Park, over by this Coast Guard.
Yeah, no, there's been some political rallies. There's an upcoming rally here on Saturday the 10th. And yeah, you know, groups are just adapting and meeting outside, and they're making use of our space, but we're requiring preparedness plans.
What kind of political rallies?
Candidates,
Okay.
you know, it's the election year.
It is? Dang, really? I didn't know that.
I think Quinn Nystrom is showing up. I think Quinn Nystrom's coming on Saturday for a meet and greet about 5:30.
Okay.
Yeah, so just like Paul thanked his staff, I want to thank my staff. It's been a tremendous year. I said this in August. We couldn't be here without them. The cleaners are exceptional. The park office workers, everybody's just had a perfect attitude here. Sam has been a trooper till the end. And I can't thank my staff enough. Like, we've just made it. We've, like, at the beginning of this meeting, we said, wasn't it just May? And we were wondering if we should open or not. And here it is October. And we've hosted tens of thousands of guests. And knock on wood, you know, we've all been okay so far. And it's been great attitude, great work ethic. And we've all just kind of shouldered through this together. So thank you, staff. And thank you, guests. Guests have been great too. So for what could have been a really bad year, to be looking back and feeling a little bit of relief is nice right now.
Yeah, a whirlwind. And thank you. All righty.
Thank you all.
I
We'll
think-
reconvene in November, hopefully with a 5th member.
That sounds good. And we can really look at those seasonal rates. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.